The stranger who saved her was not the man she expected. He was the one she feared to trust. When Clara Wynn's stagecoach shattered on a Wyoming back road in July of 1883, she had two choices: walk 20 miles through rattlesnake country at dusk, or accept help from a man she had never met. She had sworn off trusting strangers after the last one destroyed her life. But Wade Mercer did not ask questions. He did not push. He did not smile like men do when they want something. He just stood there in the fading light with his hand out, quiet, steady, impossible to read. And Clara, bleeding and broke, made the choice that would change everything. If you are watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far Clara's story travels. Hit that like button and stay with us until the end. The wheel did not just break, it exploded. Clara heard the crack first, sharp as a gunshot. Then she felt the violent lurch as the stagecoach listed hard to the left. Her shoulder slammed against the wooden frame. The woman beside her screamed. The driver shouted something lost to the wind, and then the whole rig tipped, spilling passengers into the ditch like corn from a torn sack. Clara hit the ground hard. Dust filled her mouth. Stones scraped through her dress sleeve and into the meat of her forearm. For a moment, she just lay there stunned, tasting blood and dirt, her ears ringing with the sound of splintering wood and panicked horses. When she pushed herself up, her hands came away streaked red. The other passengers were already scrambling, men cursing, the screaming woman now sobbing into her husband's chest. The driver stomping around the wreckage like a man who had just lost a month's wages. Clara stood slowly, testing her weight. Her ankle throbbed but held. Her arm burned. The sleeve of her only good dress was torn clean through. She looked around at the empty prairie stretching in all directions. Gold grass rolling under a sky too big to comfort anyone. And she felt the familiar weight settle back onto her chest, stranded again, with nothing but what she carried. The driver announced the axle had cracked clean through. They were not going anywhere until he could get a replacement sent from town. A day, maybe two. Clara closed her eyes. She had $3 left. No family waiting in Red Bluff, no job promised, just a name scribbled on a piece of paper from a woman in Cheyenne who said the boarding house there sometimes needed help. Sometimes. The word had felt thin even then. The relay station was 8 miles back. Red Bluff was 20 miles northeast. 20 miles. With the sun already sinking low and her arm bleeding through her sleeve. Clara bent to retrieve her carpet bag from the ditch. The clasp was broken. 2 of her remaining belongings had spilled into the dirt. A hairbrush, a tin cup. She picked them up without expression. Shoving them back inside, she had learned a long time ago that falling apart did not fix anything. A voice came from behind her, low and calm. "You hurt, miss?" Clara turned. The voice belonged to a tall cowboy standing apart from the wreckage. His broad-brimmed hat shadowed most of his face. He had not been on the coach. She would have remembered him. He must have been traveling the same road. Maybe heard the crash. "I am fine," Clara said. "Your arm is bleeding." I said I am fine. The cowboy did not move, did not push. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides. His posture so still he might have been carved from the landscape itself. After a moment, he gestured toward the horizon where a thin line of clouds was gathering dark and low. "Storm is coming," he said quietly. "You planning to walk?" "If I have to, 20 miles in the dark with a storm rolling in?" His tone was not mocking, just factual, like he was reading weather signs. "That is rattlesnake country after sunset, and the creeks flood fast." Clara met his eyes for the first time. They were gray, calm, unreadable. Not the eyes of a man looking to charm or hustle, just watching, waiting. "What is it to you?" she asked. "Nothing," he said simply. "But my cabin is 4 miles south. You are welcome to wait out the storm there. I will bring you into Red Bluff come morning." Every instinct Clara had learned the hard way screamed at her to refuse. Strange men offering help always wanted something. Always. The last one had wanted everything. Her trust, her savings, her body, her silence. He had taken it all and left her with nothing but the kind of shame that followed a woman like a shadow. "No, thank you," Clara said, hefting her bag. The cowboy nodded once. "No argument, no offense. Suit yourself." He turned to leave. and Clara felt a hot spike of frustration. Why did he have to make it look so easy? So unbothered? Like her refusal did not matter one way or another? Wait, she heard herself say. He stopped, glancing back. Clara hated the words even as she spoke them. If I said yes, what would you want in return? The cowboy's expression did not change. A storm is coming. You need a roof. I got one. That is all. That is never all. The wind picked up, lifting dust devils along the road. The temperature was already dropping. Clara looked at the other passengers, at the driver trying to calm the horses, at the married couple huddled together, at the empty prairie stretching into gathering darkness. She thought about rattlesnakes, about flooded creeks, about walking 20 miles on an ankle that might give out halfway, about dying alone on a road no one would remember. 4 miles, she asked. 4 miles, Clara adjusted her grip on the carpet bag. If you try anything, I have a knife, good. You should. She studied him for another long moment, searching for the angle, the trap. But his face remained as unreadable as stone, and the storm clouds were rolling closer, and her arm hurt, and she was so very tired of fighting. All right, Clara said, 4 miles south, into the unknown. The cowboy's horse was a sturdy buckskin mare with kind eyes. He offered Clara the saddle and took the reins himself, walking alongside without complaint. She did not argue. Her ankle was already swelling inside her boot. They moved in silence. The only sounds the creak of leather, the mare's steady hoofbeats, and the rising wind hissing through the grass. Clara watched the cowboy's back, his easy stride, the rifle slung across his shoulders. He moved like a man who had walked 1,000 miles and would walk 1,000 more without fanfare. What is your name? Clara asked finally, because the silence was starting to feel heavier than conversation. Wade Mercer, Clara Wind. Pleased to meet you, Miss Wind. The formality was almost funny given the circumstances. Her bleeding, stranded, riding his horse while he walked through dust. But Clara did not laugh. She had forgotten how. You live out here alone? She asked. Mostly. That does not bother you? Wade glanced back, his expression mild. Does it bother you? I am not the one living in the middle of nowhere. True enough, the conversation died there. Wade did not try to fill the silence with charm or empty talk, and Clara found herself oddly grateful for it. Most men, when they had a woman's attention, spent it trying to prove something. How clever they were, how strong, how deserving of admiration. Wade just walked. The first drops of rain hit when the cabin came into view. It sat in a shallow valley between two low hills, small and square and plain, with a stone chimney and a single window glowing orange from an oil lamp left burning. A lean-to sheltered a work area with tools hanging on the wall. A vegetable garden stretched behind the cabin, neat rows going gray in the failing light. Here, Wade said, stopping the mare near the porch. He offered Clara his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His palm was rough, his grip firm but not crushing. He steadied her as she dismounted, her ankle protesting when it took her weight. You are hurt, Wade observed. It is fine. Can you walk? Yes. He did not argue, just moved to unsaddle the mare, working with the kind of efficient grace that spoke of 10,000 repetitions. Clara stood on the porch, suddenly aware of how strange this was, standing outside a stranger's home while rain began to fall, her carpet bag clutched against her chest like a shield. Wade finished with the mare and came around, rain already darkening his shirt. You coming in, or are you planning to sleep out here? I have not decided yet. Something that might have been humor flickered across his face. Fair enough, but the coffee is hot and the roof does not leak. That has got to count for something. He walked past her and pushed open the door. Clara stood in the rain for another moment, every muscle tensed for flight, then followed him inside. The cabin was small but clean. One room, maybe 15 by 20 feet, a narrow bed in the corner with a patchwork quilt, a cast iron stove radiating heat, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with tin cups, a few books, a shaving razor, no clutter, no decoration, everything in its place, everything necessary, nothing more. It smelled like wood smoke and coffee and leather. Wade hung his hat on a peg by the door and moved to the stove. pouring coffee into 2 tin cups without asking. He set one on the table and gestured to the chair. Sit, let me see that arm. I can do it myself. Probably, but you cannot see the back of it, and I can. Clara wanted to refuse, wanted to insist she did not need help, did not need him, did not need anything from anyone. But her arm hurt, and the blood had soaked through to her elbow, and she was so tired. She sat. Wade pulled the other chair close and set a clean cloth in a bowl of water on the table. His movements were methodical, unhurried. He did not touch her until she nodded, and even then his hands were careful, rolling up her torn sleeve, dabbing away the blood, examining the scrape. Not deep, he said, but you got gravel in there. I need to clean it out. Do it. He worked in silence, his touch firm but gentle, his face concentrated. Clara watched him, searching for signs, the too long glance, the unnecessary touch, the shift in breathing that meant a man's mind had gone somewhere it should not. But Wade's expression never changed. He cleaned the wound like he was repairing a fence. Practical, focused, done. When he finished, he wrapped a clean strip of cloth around her arm and tied it off. That will hold. Change it tomorrow. Thank you. Wade stood, carrying the bowl to the basin. You hungry? No. When is the last time you ate? Clara did not answer. Wade moved to a shelf and returned with bread, cheese, dried apples. He set them on the table between them, then poured himself coffee and sat down across from her. Eat or do not, but it is there. They sat in silence while the storm gathered strength outside, rain hammering the roof, wind rattling the window. Clara kept her hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat seep into her palms. She watched Wade from the corner of her eye, the way he drank his coffee, the way he sat easy in his chair, the way he did not fill the silence with words. Why are you helping me? She asked finally. Wade looked at her over his cup. Why would I not? Because people do not without wanting something. What do you think I want? I do not know yet, Clara's voice hardened. But I will. They always do. Wade set his cup down, his gray eyes steady on hers. I am not they, Miss Wind. I am just a man with a roof in a storm outside. You needed one. I had one. That is the whole of it. Nobody is that simple. Maybe not, but I am. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly, it frightened her. But belief was a luxury she had learned to live without. There is one bed, she said bluntly. I know. Where are you sleeping? Floor is fine. Done it before. Why? Because you are hurt, and it is my cabin, and that is what decent men do. Wade's voice did not rise, but something in it shifted, something harder beneath the calm. I do not know what happened to you before, Miss Wind, and I am not asking. But if you are waiting for me to prove I am a bastard, you are going to be disappointed. The words hit Clara like cold water. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Something tight in her chest loosening just slightly. I do not trust you, she said. You should not. We just met. I mean, ever. I do not plan to trust you ever. Wade picked up his coffee again. That is your right. He said it so simply. No offense, no argument, no wounded pride, just acceptance. And somehow that was worse than if he had tried to convince her otherwise. It left her with nothing to push against, no reason to stay braced for impact. Clara picked up a piece of bread and bit into it. It was good, fresh, dense, probably baked 2 days ago. She ate it slowly, and then another piece, and some cheese, and the dried apples that tasted like late summer. Wade did not watch her eat, did not comment, just drank his coffee and stared at the stove like a man content with his own company. When Clara finished, she wiped her hands on her skirt and stood. I should rest. There is clean cloth in the chest by the bed, water in the pitcher. Clara moved to the corner, her body aching in a dozen places. She found the cloth and rewrapped her arm, fumbling slightly with the knot. When she turned, Wade was pulling blankets from a trunk, spreading them on the floor near the stove. You do not have to, Clara started. I know. The bed is big enough for two if we... No, it is not. Wade's voice was firm. And even if it was, you need to sleep without worrying. So I am sleeping here, and that is the end of it. Clara stared at him, this strange, quiet man who spoke in statements instead of arguments. Why are you being so decent? Wade looked up from the blankets, his expression unreadable. Because somebody was decent to me once, when I needed it. And I remember, he said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. Like kindness was just something you passed along. Hand to hand, stranger to stranger, no questions asked. Clara did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. She lay down on the bed, fully clothed, her carpet bag within reach, her hand near the knife she kept in her boot. The mattress was thin but clean, the quilt heavy and warm. Through the window, lightning flickered. Thunder rolled across the prairie like a warning. Wade settled onto his blankets by the stove, his back to her, his breathing already evening out. Clara lay awake for a long time, listening to the storm, listening to Wade's quiet breathing, listening to the silence between them. She waited for something to go wrong, waited for him to get up, to cross the room, to prove she had been right not to trust him. But Wade did not move. He just slept, and slowly, inch by careful inch, Clara felt something inside her begin to unclench. Not trust, she was not a fool, but maybe the possibility that not every man was a predator, that maybe in this one small cabin on the Wyoming prairie, she could close her eyes without fear. Just for tonight, just this once. Clara awoke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon. For a moment, she did not remember where she was, just registered warmth, the sound of rain, and the absence of fear. Then memory flooded back, and she sat up fast, her hand going to her boot. Wade was at the stove, his back to her, working a skillet with easy competence. He glanced over his shoulder when he heard her move. Morning, sleep all right? Clara's heart was still pounding. You should have woken me. Why? You needed sleep. I do not. She stopped, unsure what she had been about to say. I do not like being vulnerable. I do not like not knowing what is happening. I do not like waking up in strange places with strange men. All of it true, none of it sayable. Wade turned back to the skillet. Bacon and biscuits. Coffee is hot. Privy is out back if you need it, but the rain is coming down hard, so you might want to wait. Clara pushed herself out of bed, testing her ankle. It was stiff and sore, but functional. Her arm throbbed beneath the bandage. She moved to the table and sat. Accepting the coffee Wade poured without meeting his eyes. They ate in silence. Bacon, biscuits with butter, more coffee. The food was simple and good, and Clara ate more than she had intended, hunger overriding caution. When she finished, Wade refilled her cup and leaned back in his chair. Storm has got another hour in it, maybe two. After that, I will take you into Red Bluff. You do not have to, I know. But I am going anyway. Got business at the smithy. Clara wrapped her hands around her cup, the warmth seeping into her palms. Outside, rain drummed against the roof in steady rhythm. Inside, the cabin felt impossibly warm, impossibly safe. This boarding house you are going to, Wade said. They expecting you? No, but I heard they sometimes need help. Sometimes? Clara's jaw tightened. That is what I was told. Wade nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. And if they do not, then I will find something else. You got people in Red Bluff? No. Family anywhere? No. Wade absorbed this without comment, his gray eyes resting on her face. Clara met his gaze, daring him to pity her, to offer some hollow reassurance about how things would work out. Instead, he said something that surprised her. The boarding house is run by a woman named Mrs. Hutchkins. She is hard but fair. If she has got work, she will give you a shot. If she does not, the general store sometimes hires for inventory work, and the hotel needs kitchen help now and then. Clara blinked. How do you know that? I listen, and I remember. Something in Clara's chest squeezed tight. Why are you telling me this? Because you are trying to make a start, and information helps. Wade shrugged. Does not cost me anything to share it. Clara stared at him. This man who had taken her in during a storm, slept on the floor, cooked her breakfast, and was now offering her the kind of practical help she had not received from anyone in years. It did not make sense. Nothing about Wade Mercer made sense. I do not understand you, she said. Not much to understand. I see something that needs doing. I do it. Wade drained his coffee and stood. Storm is easing up. I will hitch the wagon. He moved toward the door, then paused, his hand on the latch. Without turning, he said quietly, whatever happened to you before? Whatever made you so sure men are bastards? I am sorry it happened, but it was not your fault, and it does not have to keep happening." Then he was gone, stepping out into the rain, leaving Clara alone in the warm cabin with tears burning behind her eyes that she absolutely would not shed. Because Wade Mercer was wrong. It was not that simple. It was never that simple. And if she started believing it could be, she would only get hurt again. The ride into Red Bluff took 2 hours. Wade drove the wagon with the same quiet competence he brought to everything, the mare pulling steadily through mud and standing water. Clara sat beside him, wrapped in an oilskin coat he had insisted she wear, her carpet bag wedged between her feet. They did not talk much. Wade pointed out landmarks, a lightning-struck tree, a creek that flooded every spring, the place where the road split north toward the mining camps. Clara listened without responding, filing the information away like a map she might need later. Red Bluff appeared gradually, first a church steeple, then rooftops, then the full sprawl of a frontier town trying hard to become something more. False front buildings lined a wide main street churned to mud by wagon traffic. Horses stood hip-shot at hitching posts. A handful of people moved between doorways, shoulders hunched against the rain. Wade pulled up in front of a 2-story building with a painted sign. Hutchkins Boarding House. Clean rooms. Fair rates. "This is it," he said. Clara climbed down before he could offer help, her boots squelching in the mud. She retrieved her carpet bag and stood looking up at the building, her stomach tight with the familiar cocktail of hope and dread. Wade secured the mare and came around the wagon. "Want me to go in with you?" "No, all right." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "That is directions to my place, in case you need it." Clara took the paper automatically, then frowned at it. "Why would I need it?" "Maybe you will not, but if you do, it is there." Wade settled his hat lower against the rain. "You take care of yourself, Miss Wind." He turned to go. "Wait." Wade stopped, glancing back. Clara struggled for words, her throat tight. "Thank you. For everything. You are welcome, I mean it. You did not have to help me, I know." Wade's expression softened slightly. "But I wanted to." He touched the brim of his hat and walked away, heading toward the smithy on the far end of town. Clara watched him go. This strange, decent man who had appeared out of nowhere and asked for nothing. Then she turned toward the boarding house door. Her hand was shaking when she knocked. The woman who answered was in her 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a practical dress and an appraising expression that swept over Clara from head to foot in 3 seconds. "Help you? Mrs. Hutchkins?" "That is right." Clara straightened her shoulders. "My name is Clara Wan. I am looking for work. I heard you might need help." Mrs. Hutchkins' eyes narrowed. "Who told you that?" "A woman in Cheyenne. She said you sometimes hire." "Sometimes, when I need it." Mrs. Hutchkins leaned against the doorframe. "What can you do?" "Cooking, cleaning, laundry, mending. Whatever needs doing." "You got references?" "No." "Family?" "No." "Why not?" Clara met the woman's gaze directly. "Because I left, and I am not going back." Mrs. Hutchkins studied her for a long moment, and Clara forced herself not to fidget, not to look away, not to let the weight of judgment crush her the way it had so many times before. Finally, Mrs. Hutchkins stepped back. "You can start tomorrow. $6 a week plus room and board. You will share a room with another girl. No men upstairs, no drinking, no trouble. You work hard and keep your head down. We will get along fine. You do not, you are gone. Clear?" Clara's breath left her in a rush. "Yes, ma, am." "Good. Come on. I will show you your room." Clara followed Mrs. Hutchkins inside, the door closing behind her on the rain and the mud and the morning that had started with a broken stagecoach and ended with a chance she had not expected to get. She did not look back at the street, did not let herself think about gray eyes and steady hands, and a man who had promised nothing except basic decency, because that chapter was closed. Wade Mercer had delivered her safely to town, and now she would build her life here without him. That was how it worked. That was how it had to work. Except that night, lying in a narrow bed in a room that smelled like lye soap and strangers. Clara unfolded the paper Wade had given her and read his directions by moonlight. 4 miles south, past the lightning tree, left at the split creek. Look for the cabin in the valley. She folded it carefully and tucked it under her pillow. Just in case. Just for now. Just until she was strong enough not to need it anymore. The work came hard and relentless, just the way Clara needed it. Mrs. Hutchins ran the boarding house like a general commanded troops. Efficient, exacting, and entirely unsentimental. Clara's days began at 5 in the morning and ended near midnight, filled with scrubbing floors, changing linens, hauling water, cooking meals for 12 boarders, and mending everything from torn sheets to split seams in work shirts. Her hands grew raw, her back ached, her feet throbbed in her worn boots. She had never been happier. The work left no room for thinking, no space for remembering, no energy left at day's end for anything except collapsing into bed beside Sarah. Sarah was the other hired girl, 19, cheerful, round-cheeked with easy laughter. She snored softly and never asked questions Clara did not want to answer. 3 weeks passed in a blur of lye soap and hot stoves and the particular exhaustion that comes from proving yourself one task at a time. Mrs. Hutchins watched everything with those sharp eyes, correcting Clara's technique with biscuits, showing her the proper way to black a stove, nodding silent approval when Clara finished the week's mending 2 days early. "You work hard," Mrs. Hutchins said one evening, counting out Clara's wages. "That is good. Hard work is the only honest thing in this world." Clara pocketed the $6, more money than she had held in months, and allowed herself the smallest flicker of pride. She was earning her keep, building something, becoming the kind of person who did not need rescuing. She had almost convinced herself she had forgotten about Wade Mercer. Then she saw him in town on a Saturday morning, and the lie dissolved like sugar in hot water. Clara had been sent to the general store for flour and salt. She was walking back, arms full of parcels, watching her step on the muddy boardwalk, when she heard a familiar voice. "Easy now, easy." She looked up. Wade stood outside the livery, gentling a skittish sorrel gelding with patient hands and a low, steady murmur. He wore the same clothes she remembered: work shirt, worn vest, hat shadowing his face. But something about seeing him here, in daylight, in the middle of town's Saturday bustle, made him seem more real, more substantial, more dangerous to the careful walls she had rebuilt. Clara told herself to keep walking, told herself he was just a man who had helped her once, nothing more. Someone she owed a polite nod if their paths crossed, but no deeper acknowledgement. She had thanked him already. The debt was paid. Her feet stopped anyway. Wade must have sensed her watching because he glanced over, and their eyes met across 20 feet of muddy street. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Wade said something to the gelding, gave its neck a final pat, and walked toward her. Clara's heart hammered stupidly against her ribs. "Miss Wind," Wade said, touching his hat brim. "Did not expect to see you. I work here now, at the boarding house." "I know. Mrs. Hutchins mentioned it." Clara blinked. "You have talked to Mrs. Hutchins? She comes by for eggs sometimes. I keep chickens." Wade's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly what Clara was thinking. "I asked if you had found work. She said yes. That is all." "Why would you ask about me?" "Wanted to know you were all right." The simple honesty of it knocked Clara off balance. She shifted the parcels in her arms, suddenly aware of how she must look. Hair scraped back, dress damp with dishwater, hands red and chapped from endless scrubbing. "I am fine," she said. "Good." Wade nodded toward her packages. "That is a lot to carry. Want help?" "No." "All right." He did not move to leave, though, just stood there in his infuriatingly calm way, like he had all the time in the world and no particular need to fill it with words. Clara knew she should walk away, knew she should thank him again politely and return to the boarding house and forget this conversation ever happened. But something stubborn in her, the same thing that had made her survive when survival seemed impossible, made her ask, "How have you been?" "Cannot complain. Roof still does not leak. Chickens are laying. Garden is coming in." "That is good." "How is the ankle?" "Healed, and the arm." "Fine." Clara adjusted her grip on the parcels. "Mrs. Hutchins works us hard, but she is fair. I am learning a lot. She is a good woman to work for, tough but honest." They stood in awkward silence while the town moved around them. Wagons rattling past, horses stamping, men calling to each other, women with baskets hurrying between shops. Normal people doing normal things while Clara stood frozen, unable to decide if she wanted Wade to leave or stay. "I should get back," she said finally. "Of course," Wade stepped aside to let her pass, then added quietly, "Clara." She stopped. He had never used her first name before, had stuck carefully to Miss Wind like a man respecting proper distance. Hearing it now in his low, steady voice did something to her chest she did not want to examine. "If you ever need anything," Wade said, "you know where I am." Clara wanted to tell him she would never need anything from him or anyone else. Wanted to throw his kindness back in his face because accepting it felt more dangerous than any threat. But the words would not come. She just nodded once and walked away, the parcels heavy in her arms. Wade's gaze burning between her shoulder blades until she turned the corner. That night, lying in bed beside snoring, Sarah Clara pulled out the folded directions she had kept hidden under her pillow for 3 weeks. She read them in the moonlight streaming through the window, tracing the words with one finger. 4 miles south, past the lightning tree, left at the split creek. She should throw it away. Should let Wade Mercer fade into memory like every other person who had passed through her life. Should focus on the work, the wages, the slow rebuilding of something that might eventually resemble a future. Instead, she refolded the paper carefully and tucked it back under her pillow, then turned her face to the wall and tried not to think about gray eyes and steady hands and a voice that said her name like it mattered. The weeks that followed established a rhythm Clara both relied on and resented. Work consumed her days. Mrs. Hutchins seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of tasks that needed doing, but her thoughts kept drifting south, toward a small cabin in a valley where a man lived alone with his chickens and his quiet. She saw Wade twice more in town, brief encounters that left her unsettled for days afterward. Once at the smithy where she had been sent to pick up a repaired pot. Wade was waiting for his mare to be reshod. He nodded to her, asked how she was keeping, and accepted her terse fine without pushing. The second time was at the church social. Mrs. Hutchins had insisted all her girls attend. Clara had stood at the edge of the gathering, uncomfortable in her mended dress, watching families laugh and children play and couples dance, feeling the familiar weight of not belonging settle over her like a shroud. Then Wade had appeared at her elbow with 2 cups of punch and said, "You look like you would rather be anywhere else." "I would," Clara admitted. "Me too." Wade handed her a cup. "But Mrs. Patterson makes good punch, so there is that." They had stood together in companionable silence, watching the dancers until Mrs. Hutchins had called Clara back to help serve pie. Wade had taken her empty cup without comment and disappeared into the crowd. And Clara had spent the rest of the evening hyper-aware of where he stood, who he talked to, how he moved through space like a man perfectly content with his own company. It was maddening how much she thought about him, more maddening how much she wanted to stop. August arrived with heat that turned the boarding house into an oven. Clara spent her days hauling water, wringing out laundry, and trying not to faint while cooking over the wood stove. She had saved $24, 4 weeks' wages tucked into her carpet bag. And the weight of that money felt like possibility, like freedom, like proof she could stand on her own feet. She should have been satisfied. Instead, she felt restless. "You are different lately," Sarah observed one evening as they prepared for bed. She was braiding her hair by lamplight. "Quieter. You thinking about something?" "Always thinking about something," Clara said, unlacing her boots. "About a man? No, you sure? Because you get this look sometimes, like you are somewhere else," Sarah grinned. "I saw that cowboy talking to you at the church social, the tall one with the grey eyes. He is handsome in that quiet way." "I do not think about him." "Sure you do not." Clara threw a pillow at her and Sarah laughed. But later in the dark, Clara admitted to herself that Sarah was right. She did think about Wade. Too much, in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude and everything to do with the way he had looked at her. Not with pity or judgment or hunger, but with something steadier. Something that suggested he saw past her sharp edges to whatever was underneath. She hated that she wanted to know if that was true. September came with cooler air and the first hints of gold in the cottonwoods along the creek. Mrs. Hutchins gave Clara more responsibility, managing the weekly supply orders, training new help, keeping the account books. The work was harder but more satisfying, and Clara discovered she had a head for numbers as an organization. "You are good at this," Mrs. Hutchins said, reviewing the accounts. "Better than the last girl I had. Thank you, ma'am. You thinking of staying on? Or you got other plans?" Clara hesitated. She had not let herself think past the next week, the next month, the immediate task in front of her. Planning felt like tempting fate. "I do not know. Well, you think about it. I could use someone reliable long-term. Maybe even a partnership arrangement if you prove yourself." Mrs. Hutchins closed the ledger. "You are smart, Clara, and you work hard. That counts for something in this world." The conversation planted a seed Clara could not quite uproot. A partnership, a future, something more than just survival. She could stay in Red Bluff, work her way up, become someone who mattered. It was more than she had dared hope for when she had arrived with nothing but a broken carpet bag and an armful of gravel. So why did it feel like settling? The question haunted her through the following weeks. She threw herself into work, trying to exhaust the restlessness, but it only grew stronger. Something in her had shifted during those hours in Wade's cabin. Some carefully maintained armor had cracked, and now she could not quite seal it shut again. She told herself it was just loneliness, just the normal human need for connection after months of holding everyone at arm's length. But late at night when she could not sleep, she knew it was more than that. It was Wade's voice saying her name, Wade's hands wrapping her wounded arm, Wade sleeping on the floor so she could feel safe, Wade offering help without asking for anything in return. It was the possibility, terrifying and impossible, that maybe not all men were bastards, that maybe one of them was exactly what he appeared to be. The confrontation came on a Wednesday afternoon in late September. Clara was behind the boarding house hanging laundry in the weak autumn sun when she heard raised voices from the alley. She recognized one immediately, Tom Fletcher, a boarder who worked at the lumber mill, always watching her with eyes that lingered too long on places they should not. "Come on, sweetheart," Tom was saying, his voice thick with drink despite the early hour. "Just a smile. That is all I am asking. Let me pass." The second voice was younger, frightened. Lizzie, the new girl Mrs. Hutchins had hired last week to help with laundry. Clara dropped the wet sheet she had been holding and moved toward the alley. Tom had Lizzie backed against the fence, one arm braced above her head, blocking her escape, his other hand reaching for her hair. "I said, let me pass." Lizzie's voice cracked, and I said, "Smile. You girls work here. You ought to be friendlier. Step back." Clara's voice cut through the air like a blade. Tom turned, his face flushed, eyes glassy. "This ain't your business, Clara. It is now. Step back. You always were a cold one. Maybe you need someone to teach you some manners, too." Clara closed the distance between them in 3 strides and slapped him hard. The crack echoed off the fence boards. Tom's head snapped sideways. For a moment, he just stood there, stunned. Then his face twisted into something ugly, and his hand came up fast. Clara did not flinch. She had been hit before, knew how to take it, how to survive it. But before Tom's hand could connect, someone caught his wrist in midair. "Do not." Wade Mercer stood in the alley entrance, his hand wrapped around Tom's wrist, his expression carved from stone. Clara had no idea how he had gotten there, had not heard him approach, had not seen him coming. But he was there, solid and immovable, and the quiet menace radiating from him made Tom go very still. "Let go of me," Tom said, but his voice had lost its swagger. "I will. Soon as you apologize to both these ladies and walk away. Like hell." Wade's grip tightened. Tom gasped, his knees buckling slightly. "Apologize." "Now, I'm sorry," Tom ground out, his face going red. "Sorry, all right." Wade held him for another long moment, then released him. Tom stumbled back, cradling his wrist, his eyes hot with humiliation and rage. "If I hear you have bothered either of them again," Wade said quietly, "we will have a longer conversation. Understood?" Tom spat into the dirt and stalked away, his shoulders rigid with wounded pride. Wade turned to Lizzie, his expression softening. "You all right, miss?" Lizzie nodded, her eyes wide. "Yes, sir. Thank you. Go on inside and tell Mrs. Hutchins what happened. She will want to know. Lizzie fled, leaving Clara alone with Wade in the alley. The autumn sun slanting between buildings, dust motes dancing in the light. Clara's hands were shaking. She clasped them behind her back, willing them steady. You did not have to do that, she said. Yes, I did. I had it handled. I know. I saw. Wade's gray eyes rested on her face. But you should not have to handle it alone. Something in Clara's chest cracked wider. What were you even doing here? Dropping off eggs for Mrs. Hutchins. Heard the commotion. Wade stepped closer, his voice dropping. Clara, are you all right? I am fine. You are shaking. I said I am fine. But her voice cracked on the last word, betraying her. Wade did not touch her, did not crowd her, just stood there. Close enough she could see the worry in his eyes, far enough she could breathe. He is going to make trouble for you, Clara said. Men like him always do. Let him try. You do not understand. He will. I understand perfectly. Wade's voice was quiet but absolute. And I do not care. Some things are worth trouble, Clara stared at him. This man who kept appearing in her life like some kind of frontier guardian, asking for nothing, offering everything, making her feel things she had sworn never to feel again. Why, she asked, and her voice came out smaller than she intended. Why do you keep helping me? Wade was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words were careful, chosen with the same precision he brought to everything. Because the first time I saw you, standing in that ditch with blood on your arm and walls in your eyes, I recognized something. Someone who had learned the world was cruel and decided to be harder than it. Someone who had been let down so many times they stopped reaching out. He paused. I know what that feels like, and I know how lonely it gets. Clara's throat tightened. You do not know anything about me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion, so you do not have to think. I know you hold everyone at a distance because it is safer than letting them close. I know you are terrified that if you stop being hard for even a second, you will break. Wade's voice was gentle but unflinching. I know because I spent 5 years doing the same thing. The words hit Clara like a physical blow. She wanted to deny them, to throw them back in his face, to retreat behind her walls where it was safe. But she was so tired of safe, so tired of alone. What changed? She whispered. I got tired of punishing myself for other people's sins. Wade held her gaze, and I figured out that the opposite of being hurt is not being hard. It is being brave enough to try again. Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes and blinked them back furiously. I do not know how to do that. You are doing it already. Working, building something. That takes courage. That is different, is it? The question hung between them. Heavy with implications Clara was not ready to examine. She looked away. At the fence, the hanging laundry, anywhere but Wade's steady gray eyes. I should get back to work, she said. All right, Wade did not move. Clara, do not what? Do not be kind to me. Do not look at me like that. Do not. Her voice cracked. Do not make me hope. The silence that followed felt like the space between lightning and thunder. Why not? Wade asked softly. Because I cannot survive being wrong about you. The admission cost her everything. She felt naked, exposed, raw in ways she had not allowed herself to be in years. She waited for Wade to take advantage, to press closer, to try to convince her with pretty words and empty promises. Instead, he said, then do not decide yet. Just do not close the door completely. That is all I am asking. Clara looked at him finally, really looked, at the quiet strength in his face, the patience in his stance, the absolute absence of pressure or expectation. He was offering her space, time, the chance to come to him when she was ready. If she was ever ready, it was the kindest thing anyone had ever done. I have to go, Clara said, because if she stayed one more second, she was going to do something terrifying, like reach for him. Wade nodded. I will be around. You know where. He walked away, back toward his wagon, leaving Clara standing in the alley with her heart hammering and her walls crumbling, and the terrible, beautiful possibility that maybe she did not have to be alone forever. The rest of the day passed in a haze. Clara moved through her tasks mechanically, helping Lizzie finish the laundry, preparing dinner, serving the boarders. Mrs. Hutchins pulled her aside to ask about Tom Fletcher, and Clara gave her the facts in flat, emotionless sentences. Mrs. Hutchins listened, her face hardening. "He is out," she said. "Tonight, I do not tolerate that behavior. He might cause trouble. Let him. I have dealt with worse." Mrs. Hutchins studied Clara. "You all right?" "Yes, Ma, I am. That cowboy Mercer, he a friend of yours?" Clara hesitated. "I do not know what he is." Mrs. Hutchins made a sound that might have been approval. "Well, whatever he is decent. Does not happen often." She handed Clara a basket of eggs. "He left these. Said to tell you he would be at the church social Saturday if you wanted to talk." Clara took the eggs, their shells still warm, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Saturday, 3 days away. She had 3 days to decide if she was brave enough to try. The 3 days felt like 3 years. Clara tried to lose herself in work, but her mind kept circling back to Wade's words in the alley, to the way he had looked at her, to the impossible question of what she wanted versus what she could survive wanting. She scrubbed floors until her knuckles bled, kneaded bread until her arms ached, folded laundry with such fierce concentration that Sarah finally asked if the sheets had personally offended her. "You are wound tighter than a watch spring," Sarah said Friday night as they prepared for bed. "What is eating you?" "Nothing. Is it that cowboy? The one who stood up to Tom Fletcher?" Clara's hands stilled on the buttons of her nightdress. "What did you hear?" "Everything. Whole house heard." Sarah sat on her bed, braiding her hair. "Lizzie said he grabbed Tom's wrist and made him apologize. Said he looked like he could have snapped Tom in half if he wanted to. He would not have." "How do you know?" "Because Wade Mercer was not that kind of man. Because he had slept on the floor to give her peace. Because he had waited 3 months without pushing, without demanding, without expecting anything except that she not close the door completely." "I just know," Clara said. Sarah studied her with knowing eyes. "You like him, I do not." "Clara, I am not blind. I see how you look when someone mentions him. Like you are scared and hopeful at the same time." Sarah's voice softened. "What is so frightening about a good man?" "Everything," Clara wanted to say. "Because good men were supposed to be myths. And if Wade was real, if he was exactly what he appeared to be, then everything she had built her survival on was wrong. Every wall she had raised was unnecessary. Every lesson she had learned about protecting herself was a lie. And if she was wrong about that, what else might she be wrong about?" "I do not know how to do this," Clara admitted quietly. "Do what?" "Trust someone. Want someone. Let someone close without waiting for them to hurt me." Sarah set down her braid and crossed to Clara's bed, sitting beside her. "You know what I think? I think you are braver than you give yourself credit for. You left everything, came here with nothing, built a life from scratch. That is not what scared people do. That is different. That is survival. Maybe. Or maybe letting someone care about you is just another kind of survival, the kind that makes life worth living instead of just enduring." Sarah squeezed Clara's hand. "You going to the social tomorrow?" Clara's heart hammered. "I do not know." "Well, if you do wear the blue dress, it makes your eyes look pretty." That night, Clara dreamed of thunderstorms and warm cabins and a man's steady voice saying her name like it mattered. She woke before dawn with her decision made, though she could not have said when exactly she had made it. She was going to the church social. She was going to find Wade Mercer, and she was going to be brave enough to tell him the truth, whatever that truth turned out to be. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a crisp wind that smelled of autumn and possibility. Clara helped with the morning chores in a distracted haze, her mind already at the church grounds, already searching for gray eyes in the crowd. Mrs. Hutchins gave her the afternoon off with a knowing look that suggested she understood more than Clara had said. "The blue dress," Sarah insisted, pulling it from the wardrobe they shared. "And let me do your hair," Clara submitted to being fussed over, something she would have refused a month ago. Sarah pinned her dark hair up with practiced efficiency, leaving a few curls loose to soften her face. The blue dress was simple but well made, traded to Clara by another boarder for 3 weeks of mending. It fit properly, which was more than could be said for most of her wardrobe. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, stepping back to admire her work. Clara looked at herself in the small mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not beautiful. She had never been beautiful, but softer somehow, less armored, more like someone who might allow herself to be wanted. The thought terrified her. The church social was in full swing when Clara arrived. The grounds behind the white clapboard building filled with families, children playing tag, women setting out food on long tables, men clustered in groups talking weather and cattle prices. A fiddle player and a guitar player were tuning up near a cleared space for dancing. The air smelled of fried chicken and apple pie and wood smoke from the bonfire someone had started in an iron barrel. Clara stood at the edge of the gathering, her courage already fraying. This had been a mistake. She should go back to the boarding house, back to work, back to the life she understood. Then she saw him. Wade stood near the far side of the grounds, talking with the blacksmith and another rancher Clara did not know. He wore a clean shirt and his good vest, his hat in his hands, his hair catching the afternoon light. He was listening more than talking, nodding at something the blacksmith said, his expression serious. As if sensing her gaze, Wade looked up. Their eyes met across 50 feet of churchyard, across gathered families and normal people living normal lives. And something passed between them that made Clara's breath catch. Wade said something to the men, excused himself, and started walking toward her. Clara's first instinct was to run. Her second was to stay frozen. Her third, the one she chose, was to meet him halfway. They stopped a few feet apart, close enough to talk privately, far enough to maintain propriety. Clara was intensely aware of people watching, of whispers starting, of the way small-town eyes tracked any interaction that might become gossip. "You came," Wade said. "Mrs. Hutchins gave me the afternoon off. I am glad." Wade held her gaze, and there was something in his eyes that made Clara's chest tight. "You look nice," Sarah insisted on the dress. "Tell Sarah she has good taste." A pause. "Though I think you would look just as pretty in anything." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks and hated herself for it. She was not some blushing girl who had never been complimented, but hearing it from Wade, honest and matter of fact, like he was stating a truth about the weather, did something to her she could not control. "I do not know how to do this," she said abruptly. "Do what?" "This, whatever this is, standing here talking to you while the whole town watches, pretending I know what I am doing." Wade glanced around at the social, then back at her. "Want to take a walk?" "Where?" "Anywhere that is not here." Clara knew she should say no, knew that walking off alone with Wade would fuel every gossip's fire. But she nodded anyway, and Wade led her away from the church grounds, down a path that wound toward the creek behind town. They walked in silence for a while, the sounds of the social fading behind them. The path was narrow, forcing them to walk single file at first, then wider where it opened onto the creek bank. The water ran clear and shallow over smooth stones, cottonwoods dropping gold leaves onto its surface. It was peaceful in a way that made Clara's ribs ache. Wade stopped near a fallen log and gestured to it. "Want to sit?" Clara sat, and Wade settled beside her. Not too close, leaving space between them. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, just watched the water flow past, carrying leaves and light downstream. "I need to tell you something," Clara said finally. "All right, and I need you to not interrupt until I am finished, because if you do, I might lose my nerve." Wade nodded, his expression serious. Clara took a breath, gathering words she had never planned to speak. "The last man I trusted was named Robert. I met him in Cheyenne 2 years ago. He was charming, attentive, everything a lonely girl wants to believe in. He said he loved me, said he wanted to marry me. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because I was tired of being alone." She paused, her throat tight. Wade remained still beside her, waiting. He needed money for a business venture. "I had some savings, not much, but some. I gave it to him because I trusted him. Then he needed more. I borrowed from people I should not have borrowed from. Gave him that too. And then one morning I woke up and he was gone. All the money gone. My reputation destroyed. People I owed coming for payment I could not make." Clara's hands clenched in her lap. "I found out later he had done it before. To other women. It was a pattern. He would find someone vulnerable, someone desperate to be loved, and he would take everything. I was not special. I was just convenient. The words tasted like ash, but she forced them out. So I left Cheyenne with nothing but a carpet bag and a lesson. Do not trust men. Do not trust anyone. Do not ever put yourself in a position to be hurt again. She finally looked at Wade. His face was calm, but his eyes held something fierce and sad. Then that stagecoach wheel broke, Clara continued, and you appeared, and you were kind without wanting anything, patient without pushing, decent in ways I did not know how to handle. And I kept waiting for you to show your real face, to prove you were just like Robert, just better at hiding it. But I have not, Wade said quietly. No, you have not. And that scares me more than if you had. Clara's voice cracked. Because if you are real, if you are actually the man you appear to be, then I have to admit I was wrong. That not all men are bastards. That maybe I have been protecting myself from something good because I was too afraid to take the risk. She turned to face him fully. So I need to know Wade Mercer, right now, before I let myself hope. Are you real? Or are you just better at the game than Robert was? Wade was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching her face. When he spoke, his voice was low and absolutely steady. I am real, Clara. And I am not playing any game. How do I know that? Because I am going to tell you the truth, even when it is hard, even when it might make you run. Wade shifted to face her, and his expression was more open than she had ever seen it. I lost my brother 3 years ago, Ethan. He was younger than me by 2 years, and he was everything I was not. Charming, easy with people, full of dreams. We worked a ranch together up in Montana, just the two of us after our parents passed. Wade's jaw tightened. Ethan fell for a woman in town. Pretty thing, clever, always smiling. I tried to tell him something was off about her, but he would not listen. Said I was just jealous because I had never let myself feel anything. Maybe he was right. He paused, and Clara saw pain flicker across his face. She convinced him to sell the ranch. Said they would move to California, start fresh. He signed the papers because he trusted her. Week later, she was gone, with every cent. And Ethan? Wade's voice roughened. He could not live with being that wrong about someone. Could not live with being made a fool. So he did not. Clara's breath caught. Wade. I found him in the barn. He had left a note. Just a list of things he had wanted to do, places he had wanted to see. And at the bottom, 3 words. Do not die alone. Wade's eyes were distant, seeing something Clara could not. So I sold what was left, came here, built that cabin, and told myself I would keep my distance from everyone, safer that way. Less chance of getting hurt, or watching someone else get destroyed. He looked at Clara directly. Then you fell out of that stagecoach, bleeding and furious, and so determined not to need help. And I saw Ethan in you, saw someone who had been hurt and decided the answer was to lock yourself away. And I thought maybe I could show you what I learned too late to show him. What is that? Clara whispered. That being hurt does not mean you have to stay hurt. That walls keep you safe, but they also keep you alone. That the opposite of betrayal is not isolation. It is finding someone who chooses you anyway, even knowing all your broken parts. Wade's voice dropped lower. I am not going to tell you I will never hurt you, Clara, because people hurt each other sometimes, even when they do not mean to. But I can promise you I will never betray you, never lie to you, never make you feel small or foolish for trusting me. And if you give me your hand, I will hold it like it is something precious, because it will be. Tears burned hot behind Clara's eyes. What if I cannot? What if I am too broken? You are not broken. You are careful. There is a difference. Wade's hand moved like he might reach for her, then stopped, respecting the space between them. I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now. I am just asking you to consider that maybe. Maybe not every man who offers help wants to take something in return. That maybe some of us just want to be the kind of person who makes the world a little less cruel. Clara could not stop the tears anymore. They spilled hot down her cheeks, and she did not wipe them away. Just let them fall while Wade sat beside her, steady as stone, waiting. I am afraid, she admitted. I know. I am afraid of wanting this and having it taken away. That is fair. I am afraid you will get tired of waiting for me to be ready. I will not. How do you know? Wade smiled slightly, the first real smile she had seen from him. Because I have been waiting 3 months already, and I am still here, and I will wait 3 more. Or 3 years, or however long it takes, because some things are worth the wait. Something in Clara's chest cracked open completely. She looked at this man, this quiet, patient man who had lost his brother to betrayal and chose kindness anyway, and made a decision that terrified her. She reached out and took his hand. Wade's fingers closed around hers, warm and calloused and steady. And for the first time in 2 years, Clara let herself believe that maybe she was not alone anymore. They sat by the creek for a long time, hands linked, watching the water carry leaves downstream while the afternoon light turned gold around them. Wade did not try to kiss her, or pull her closer, or push for more than she had given. He just held her hand, like it was exactly enough. What happens now? Clara asked finally. Whatever you want to happen. That is not an answer. Sure it is. You tell me what you are comfortable with, and we do that. You want to go back to the social and dance? We will dance. You want to go back to the boarding house and pretend this conversation never happened? I will understand. You want to come out to my place sometime and see what I have been building? Door is open. Wade squeezed her hand gently. I am not going to push you, Clara, but I am not going to disappear either. Clara thought about that, about Wade as a constant presence, steady and patient, waiting for her to be ready, about having someone who did not demand or pressure, but simply existed as a possibility she could reach for when she found the courage. I want to see what you are building, she heard herself say. Wade turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his face. Yeah? Yeah, not today, but soon. Clara met his eyes. I want to understand who you are when you are not rescuing stranded women. I want to see the life you have made. And I want, she paused, searching for words. I want to see if I can be part of it. You can, Wade said simply, anytime you want. They walked back to the social slowly, still holding hands. And Clara felt every eye turn toward them when they emerged from the creek path. Let them look. Let them talk. She was done living her life based on other people's judgments. The fiddle and guitar had started playing, and couples were dancing in the cleared space. Wade led Clara to the edge of the dancers and turned to her with a question in his eyes. I do not dance well, Clara warned. Neither do I. We will be terrible together. He pulled her into the dance, one hand at her waist, the other still holding hers. And Clara discovered he was right. They were terrible. Wade moved with the grace of a man more comfortable on horseback, and Clara kept anticipating his steps wrong. But it did not matter. They laughed at their mistakes, adjusted, tried again. And when the song ended and another began, they kept dancing, finding their rhythm through trial and error and the simple willingness to triumph. Mrs. Hutchins appeared at Clara's elbow during a break between songs. Well, she said, eyeing Wade with something that might have been approval, I suppose if you are going to make a spectacle of yourself, you could do worse. I am sorry if... Do not apologize. You are allowed to have a life outside work. Mrs. Hutchins' expression softened slightly. He seems decent enough, and you seem happier than I have seen you. That counts for something. After the social ended and the sun was setting, Wade walked Clara back to the boarding house. They moved slowly, neither wanting the day to end, their joined hands swinging slightly between them. Come out tomorrow, Wade said when they reached the boarding house steps. Afternoon, after your morning chores. I will show you around the place properly. Clara's heart hammered. Going to Wade's cabin alone by choice was different from being stranded there by necessity. It was a declaration, a step forward she could not take back. All right, she said. Wade's face broke into a genuine smile, the first full one she had seen. And Clara realized he had been nervous too, afraid she would refuse, afraid she had changed her mind. Tomorrow then, he said, squeezing her hand once before releasing it. Clara watched him walk away toward where he had left his wagon, his silhouette dark against the purple sky. Then she turned and climbed the steps to the boarding house, her hands still warm from his touch, her chest full of something that felt dangerously like hope. Sarah was waiting in their room, eyes bright with curiosity. Well, what? Did you talk to him? Did he say anything? Did you? Sarah gasped. Clara, you are smiling. Clara touched her face, surprised to find Sarah was right. She was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in longer than she could remember. We talked, Clara said, and, and, and I am going to his place tomorrow. Sarah let out a squeal and threw her arms around Clara. I knew it. I knew you liked him. Clara hugged her back, allowing herself this moment of girlish excitement, this brief surrender to feelings she had denied for so long. I am terrified, Sarah. That is how you know it matters. Sarah pulled back, her expression turning serious. Just promise me you will be careful. I know you like him, but I will, Clara interrupted. I am going in with my eyes open. If he turns out to be wrong, I will walk away. But even as she said it, Clara knew it was a lie. Not because Wade would be wrong. She believed now that he was exactly who he appeared to be, but because walking away from Wade Mercer was going to be impossible. She had already given him too much of her carefully guarded heart. That night, lying in bed, Clara did not pull out the folded directions from under her pillow. She did not need them anymore. She knew where Wade was, knew he would be waiting, and for the first time since Robert had destroyed her faith in good things, Clara let herself believe that tomorrow might bring something worth the risk. The morning chores seemed endless. Clara scrubbed and swept and cooked with half her mind already 4 miles south, already standing outside Wade's cabin, already taking that final step from safety into possibility. Mrs. Hutchkins finally shooed her out after lunch, telling her she was more hindrance than help with her distracted state. Go on, Mrs. Hutchkins said, but be back before dark. I do not want people talking more than they already are. Clara changed into her simplest dress, practical for riding. Nothing fancy. She did not want Wade to think she was trying too hard, did not want this to feel like some formal courtship from a storybook. She wanted it real, honest, as unadorned as everything else between them had been. The walk to the livery where Wade had said he would wait with the wagon felt both too long and too short. Her heart hammered with each step, her mind racing through 1,000 scenarios. What they would say, where they would go, what it would mean when she crossed that threshold again by choice instead of necessity. Wade was waiting, leaning against the wagon with his arms crossed, his hat low against the afternoon sun. When he saw her, he straightened, and the expression on his face, pleased and nervous and hopeful, made Clara's chest go tight. Ready? He asked. Clara took a breath. Ready. She climbed into the wagon beside him, and Wade clicked to the mare, and they headed south out of town toward whatever came next. The ride south felt different than it had 4 months ago in the storm. Then Clara had been braced for betrayal, every muscle tense, her mind cataloging escape routes. Now she sat beside Wade in comfortable silence, watching the prairie roll past in waves of gold grass, cottonwoods blazing orange along distant creek beds, the sky so blue it hurt to look at. Wade did not fill the silence with empty talk. He pointed out landmarks, a hawk's nest in a dead tree, the place where a flash flood had carved a new channel last spring, a cluster of wildflowers that somehow still bloomed despite the autumn chill. His voice was easy, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world and nothing to prove. Clara found herself relaxing degree by degree, her shoulders dropping, her hands loosening their grip on the wagon seat. This was different from any courtship she had known or imagined. There was no performance here, no careful dance of impression management, just two people moving through landscape together, learning each other's rhythms. You are quiet, Wade observed as they approached the lightning-struck tree that marked the turn toward his place. I am always quiet. It's always quiet. True, but this is different quiet. Thinking quiet. Clara glanced at him. Is that a problem? No, just wondering what you are thinking about. She considered lying, then decided against it. Wade had been honest with her. She owed him the same. I am thinking about how strange this feels, being here by choice, not running or hiding or bracing for impact. Strange bad or strange good? I do not know yet. Wade nodded like that was a perfectly reasonable answer. Fair enough. The cabin came into view as they crested the low hill, and Clara's breath caught. She had only seen it once before, in storm and darkness and fear. Now in afternoon light it looked different, solid, welcoming, like something built to last. Smoke curled from the chimney. The vegetable garden was mostly harvested, just a few late squash and some herbs still green. Chickens scratched in the dirt near the lean-to. Everything was neat, orderly, cared for with the same quiet competence Wade brought to everything. Wade helped her down from the wagon, his hands steady at her waist, and Clara felt the solid warmth of him before he stepped back. He did not hold on too long or pull her closer, just steadied her, then gave her space. "Welcome," he said simply. Clara stood looking at the cabin, at the life Wade had built here alone. "You have done well. It is enough, more than enough for one person." A pause, Mo. "Could be more for two." The words hung in the air between them. Not quite a question, not quite a statement. Clara's heart hammered. "Wade, I am not pushing," he said quickly. "Just stating fact. The cabin is small, but it could expand. The land is good. There is room to grow. If—" He trailed off, then shook his head. "Come on, let me show you around before I say something that sends you running." He led her first to the chicken coop, a sturdy structure with good ventilation and clean straw. The hens clucked and fussed, and Wade scattered feed with practiced ease, talking to them like they were old friends. 15 hens and 1 rooster, he said. "They keep me in eggs and company. You talk to your chickens?" "Why not? They are better conversationalists than most people." Clara felt a smile tug at her lips. "What do you talk about?" "Weather, philosophy, whether or not that hawk circling overhead is serious about dinner." Wade closed the coop door. "They are good listeners. Never interrupt." The garden came next, Wade pointing out what he had planted, what had done well, what he would try different next year. Clara found herself asking questions about soil preparation, pest control, seed saving. She had never gardened, had never stayed anywhere long enough to plant something and watch it grow. But listening to Wade talk about seasons and cycles and patient work that paid off months later made her want to try. "You could plant whatever you wanted," Wade said, almost casually. "If you were here, spring peas maybe, tomatoes, whatever you like eating." Clara's throat tightened. He was painting pictures for her, showing her what life here could look like. Careful not to pressure, but impossible to ignore. "I have never grown anything before. Neither had I when I started. You learn by doing. Make mistakes. Try again." He glanced at her. That is how most things worth doing work. They moved to the lean to where Wade kept his tools, all hung properly. Well maintained. Everything in its place. He showed her the saddle he had been repairing, the fence posts he had cut and stacked for spring repairs, the small forge where he did basic blacksmithing when he could not get to town. "You do all this yourself?" Clara asked. "Mostly. Sometimes I trade work with neighbors, help them with harvest. They help me with building projects. That is how frontier life works. Everyone needs everyone eventually. I would not know how to do any of this." Wade turned to face her. "You already know the most important part." "What is that?" "How to work hard. How to keep going when things are difficult. How to survive." His gray eyes held hers. "The rest is just learning. And I am a decent teacher if you are a willing student." The implications in those words made Clara's pulse quicken. Learning together, working side by side, building something that required both of them. "Come inside," Wade said. "I will make coffee." The cabin was exactly as Clara remembered. Clean, spare, everything necessary and nothing more. But now in daylight, she noticed details she had missed. Books on the shelf, their spines worn from reading. A patchwork quilt on the bed that someone had made with care, each square a different fabric. A wooden box on the table, polished, smooth. Wade saw her looking at the box. That was Ethan's. He was better at woodworking than me. Made it for our mother before she passed. Clara moved closer, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "What do you keep in it?" "His list, the one he left." Wade's voice was quiet. "I read it sometimes. Reminds me why I am still here. Can I see it?" Wade hesitated, then opened the box and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Yellowed at the edges, creased from much handling. He unfolded it carefully and handed it to Clara. She read the list slowly. Places Ethan had wanted to see. San Francisco, New Orleans, the Grand Canyon. Things he had wanted to do, learn to play piano, write a book, fall in love with someone who loved him back. And at the bottom, in handwriting that had started to shake, do not die alone. Clara's vision blurred. He was so young, 26, too young to give up, but he could not see past the hurt. Wade took the paper back, refolded it with reverent care. I keep it to remember that being hurt is not the worst thing. Being so afraid of hurt that you stop living. That is worse. He put the list back in the box and closed it. Then he moved to the stove and began making coffee. His movements automatic, soothing in their familiarity. Clara sat at the table and watched him work. This was what life here would be, she realized. Quiet domesticity, shared tasks, the comfortable silence of people who did not need words to communicate. It was so far from the excitement she had imagined as a girl, the romance and passion and grand gestures. It was better. Wade poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her. For a long moment, they just sat there, drinking in silence. The afternoon light slanting through the window, dust motes dancing in the beams. Tell me something true, Clara said suddenly. Wade raised an eyebrow. Like what? Anything. Something you do not tell most people. Something real. Wade considered this, his fingers wrapped around his coffee cup. I am lonely sometimes. Even with the chickens and the work and the neighbors, there are days when the silence gets so loud I cannot stand it. When I wonder if Ethan was right. If building walls just means dying alone behind them. The admission cost him something. Clara could see it in the tightness around his eyes. She reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. I am lonely too, she said. All the time. Even in a boarding house full of people. Even doing work I am good at. There is this space inside me that nothing fills. She paused. Except when I am with you. Then it is quieter. Wade's hand turned under hers, his fingers threading through hers. Yeah. They sat like that, hands linked across the table, while the sun moved lower and shadows lengthened. Eventually, Wade said, I should show you the fence line, the real reason I asked you out here. Clara felt a spike of disappointment that he was changing the subject. Pulling back. The fence line? Come on, you will see. He led her outside and around the back of the cabin to where split rail fencing marked the boundary of his property. They walked along it, Wade pointing out places where posts needed replacing, where rails had rotted and needed reinforcement. Normal practical concerns. Then they reached a section where the fence ended abruptly. Posts already dug, but no rails attached. Wade stopped there, his hand resting on an empty post. I started expanding last month, he said. Been thinking about adding on to the cabin. Maybe a second room. Maybe more. But I could not decide how much to build. Why not? Wade turned to face her fully. Because I did not know if I was building for one person or two. Clara's heart stopped. Wade, I am not proposing, he said quickly. I am not asking you to decide anything right now. But I need you to know what I am thinking, what I am hoping for. He took a breath. I want to build a life here, Clara. Not just survive, but actually live. And I want to build it with you. We barely know each other. I know. That is why I am not asking for an answer. I am just asking if you will keep coming out here. Keep spending time with me. Let me show you what this life could be. And when you are ready, if you are ever ready, then we will talk about next steps. Clara felt tears burning behind her eyes. What if I am never ready? What if I cannot give you what you want? Then I will have spent my time with someone who makes the world feel less empty. That is not nothing. Wade's voice was steady, certain. But I think you will get there. I think you are braver than you believe you are. I am not brave. I am terrified. Bravery is not the absence of fear, Clara. It is doing the thing anyway. He squeezed her hand. You left everything you knew, built a new life from nothing, stood up to men who tried to hurt you. Came out here today, knowing it might change everything. That is brave. Clara could not speak past the lump in her throat. She looked at this man, this impossibly patient, steady man, and felt something inside her shift and settle. Not trust, not yet, but the foundation trust could build on. Take me through it, she said hoarsely. Through what? What life here would look like? Do not leave anything out. Show me the hard parts too. Wade studied her face, searching for something, then nodded. All right, come on. He walked her through his daily routine, rising at dawn to feed the chickens and milk the cow he kept in a small barn she had not seen yet, checking fence lines and water sources, working whatever needed doing, repairs, improvements, preparation for winter, evenings reading or working wood by lamplight, the isolation, especially in deep winter when snow made town trips impossible for weeks, the endless work of keeping a homestead running, the uncertainty of weather and markets and whether the crops would be enough. It is not easy, Wade said, and it is not romantic. It is just work, day after day, with nobody to share it except yourself. But you like it. I do, because it is mine, because I built it with my own hands, because when I look around, I see proof that I am not just surviving. I am making something that will outlast me. He paused. It would be better with two, though, with someone to share the work and the quiet, someone to talk to besides chickens. Clara smiled despite herself. What would my days look like? Wade considered this seriously, however you wanted them to. If you wanted to keep working in town, I would drive you in every day and pick you up. If you wanted to work here, there is plenty to do. Garden, chickens, eventually a cow to milk, cooking, preserving food for winter. Or both. Plenty of ranch wives work other jobs too. Ranch wife. The word felt strange in Clara's mouth. Is that what you were thinking? Eventually, if you wanted it. But we would do this proper. Courtship first. Time to know each other. Everything respectable. Wade's expression was earnest. I am not trying to rush you into anything, Clara. I just want you to see what is possible. What I am working toward. They walked back to the cabin as the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Wade started a fire in the yard and brought out biscuits and dried meat for a simple dinner. They ate sitting on the porch steps, shoulders almost touching, watching the stars begin to emerge. Tell me about your family, Wade said. You said you had none, but you must have come from somewhere. Clara stiffened. It is not a happy story. Most stories worth telling are not. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, my mother died when I was 12. Fever. My father tried his best, but he was a drinker, and grief made it worse. I raised myself mostly, worked whatever jobs I could find to keep us fed. When I was 19, he drank himself to death. And I was alone. I am sorry. Do not be. I survived. That is more than a lot of people can say. Clara picked at her biscuit. That is when I met Robert. I was working at a hotel in Cheyenne, and he seemed like everything I had never had. Stability, charm, someone who wanted me. I thought I had finally found something good, but he was a lie. Everything about him was a lie. The business venture, the marriage plans, the love, all of it designed to take what little I had. Clara's voice hardened. The worst part was not losing the money. It was realizing how stupid I had been, how desperate, how easily I had believed what I wanted to believe. Wade set down his food and turned to face her. You were not stupid. You were human. We all want to believe in goodness, especially when we have seen so little of it. You did not fall for a con artist. No, but I watched my brother do it, and I blamed myself for not stopping him, for not making him see reason. Wade's voice was rough. We torture ourselves for being human, Clara, for wanting things, for making mistakes. But mistakes are how we learn what is real and what is not. And what if I make the same mistake with you? Then you make it, and we will deal with it together. Wade held her gaze. But I am not Robert. I am not charming or exciting or full of big promises. I am just a man with a cabin and some chickens and the willingness to work hard. What you see is what there is. Clara wanted desperately to believe him. How do I know for sure? You do not today. Maybe not for months. Wade's expression was gentle. But you can test it. Come out here whenever you want. Watch how I live. See if my actions match my words. And if you ever catch me in a lie, walk away. I will not stop you. The honesty of it, the complete absence of pressure or manipulation, made Clara's chest ache. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. You show up, I show up. We figure it out as we go. He smiled slightly. That is all any relationship is, really. Two people choosing each other over and over until it becomes habit. They sat in comfortable silence as full darkness fell and the fire burned low. Finally, Wade said, I should get you back before Mrs. Hutchins sends a search party. The ride back to town was quiet, both of them tired, but it was a good tired. Clara found herself leaning slightly into Wade's shoulder, and he did not pull away or make it awkward. He just let her rest, his presence steady as stone. When they reached the boarding house, Wade helped her down and walked her to the steps. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for showing me. Will you come again? Clara did not hesitate. Yes. Something in Wade's face softened. Good. Next Sunday, if you can, I will make you a real meal instead of biscuits and dried meat. You do not have to, I want to. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so tender it made Clara's breath catch. I want to do a lot of things, Clara, but I will go as slow as you need. Then he touched his hat brim and walked back to his wagon, leaving Clara standing on the steps with her heart hammering and her carefully rebuilt walls crumbling faster than she could shore them up. Winter came early that year, the first snow falling in mid-November and blanketing the prairie in white silence. Clara watched it from the boarding house window, her breath fogging the glass, and thought about Wade alone in his cabin 4 miles south. The roads would be impassable soon. Weeks might go by before she could see him again. The thought made her chest ache. You are thinking about him again, Sarah said from her bed. I am always thinking about him. That is what love looks like, you know. Clara turned from the window. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe this constant pull toward Wade was love. She had thought love was supposed to feel different, more dramatic. But this quiet certainty, this bone-deep knowing that Wade was home in ways no place had ever been, maybe that was what real love looked like. The snow fell harder, and Clara made a decision. I am going to see him, she said. Sarah sat up. Now? Clara, it is nearly dark, and the snow. I need to tell him something, and it cannot wait. Tell him what? That I love him. Mrs. Hutchins gave her the covered sleigh and a buffalo robe. The ride through falling snow felt like moving through a dream. Her heart hammered harder with each passing mile. The cabin appeared through the snow, windows glowing orange with lamplight, smoke curling from the chimney. This time Clara was not arriving as a stranger seeking shelter. She was coming home. She knocked on the door. Wade opened it, his expression shifting from surprise to concern to hope. Clara, what are you? Is everything all right? Everything is fine. Can I come in? He stepped back immediately. You should not have come out in this weather, Wade said. I know, but I could not wait anymore. Clara set down her bag and faced him. I spent all evening watching snow fall and thinking about you alone out here, and I realized I was done pretending I did not know what I wanted. Wade went very still. What do you want? This, you, all of it. Clara's voice was steady despite her hammering heart. I want to wake up in this cabin and know you are here. I want to work beside you and learn your routines. I want to stop being so afraid of good things that I push them away. Wade closed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands came up to frame her face. You are sure? I am sure I love you, Wade. I think I have since you slept on the floor so I could feel safe. Wade made a choke sound. I love you too. Have for months. Just been waiting for you to catch up. He kissed her then, and this time there was no holding back. This was the kiss of 2 people who had found each other against all odds. When they broke apart, Wade said, Marry me, tomorrow, soon as the road's clear. Clara laughed, giddy and free. Yes. Wade's face broke into a smile. We are done waiting now, right? We are done waiting. They spent that night talking, making plans, imagining futures. Wade slept on the floor again, insisting on doing this right, and Clara loved him more for it. The snow stopped by morning. Clara awoke to sunlight streaming through the window and Wade's voice calling her to breakfast. She had never felt so rested, so safe, so certain. The main road had been cleared by neighbors working together, and by afternoon Wade had hitched up the wagon. They drove into Red Bluff, Clara's hand tucked in Wade's, both quiet with anticipation. Mrs. Hutchins was waiting at the boarding house. Well, you survived the night. We did, Clara said, and we are getting married today. Mrs. Hutchins' stern expression cracked into something almost like a smile. About time. The preacher is at the church. I will stand witness, she looked at Wade. You are sure about this? She is stubborn and proud and has a mouth on her when she is riled. I know, Wade said solemnly. That is why I love here. The wedding was simple, held in the small church with Mrs. Hutchkins and Sarah as witnesses. Clara wore her blue dress. Wade wore his good vest. They spoke their vows quietly, hands clasped, eyes locked on each other. When the preacher declared them husband and wife, Wade kissed Clara with such tender reverence that she forgot to breathe. You are mine now, he whispered against her lips. I have been yours since you slept on the floor. Clara whispered back. They drove back to the cabin as the sun set. Wade carried Clara over the threshold, despite her protests. This is your home now, he said, setting her down carefully. Our home. Clara looked around the small cabin, everything familiar now, everything beloved. Our home, she repeated, and felt the truth of it settle into her bones. The winter passed in a blur of learning and loving. Clara divided her time between the cabin and the boarding house. Wade never complained, just drove her to town and picked her up. Steady as sunrise. She burned bread and oversalted stew. Wade never criticized, just showed her again how to do it right. Slowly her competence grew. You are getting good at this, Wade said one evening, only because you are patient with me. No, because you are determined. That is different. Spring came with mud and green shoots. Wade began work on the addition. Clara helped. She learned to measure boards and hold steady while he hammered. Neighbors came to help with framing. Clara cooked for them all. Mrs. Hutchkins brought a quilt the girls had made, each square a different pattern. Clara's eyes burned with tears. It means I am one of them now, part of the community. Wade pulled her close. You have it all now. Home, community, people who care about you, and me. You will always have me. By midsummer, the addition was complete. 2 rooms, a bedroom for them, and a second room. Could be a nursery, Wade said. Clara smiled. She had missed 2 monthly courses, and she recognized the signs. They were going to need that nursery. Wade? I think I am pregnant. His eyes went bright with tears. That is the best news I have heard in my entire life. We are having a baby, Clara whispered, and felt joy bubble up from someplace deep inside her. 10 years later, the baby came in February during a snowstorm. A boy. They named him Ethan, after Wade's brother. Wade cradled his son with such gentle reverence that Clara's heart cracked open. He is perfect, Wade whispered. 2 years later came Rose, who had Wade's gray eyes and Clara's stubborn will. The cabin expanded again. The garden flourished. The chickens multiplied, all bearing ridiculous royal names. They had hard times too. Drought, injury, sickness. But they weathered it together, the way Wade had promised. They learned each other's needs and fears, and chose each other anyway, every single day. On their 10th anniversary, Wade took Clara to the creek where they had had that first real conversation. They sat on the same fallen log, watching the water flow past. You know what I was thinking? Wade said. What? That I am glad that stagecoach wheel broke. Clara laughed. You have said that before. I know, but I mean it more every year. He pulled out Ethan's list. Clara saw new writing at the bottom in Wade's hand. Marry someone who chooses you every day. Build a home that matters. Raise children who know they are loved. Wake up grateful. Die surrounded by everything that made life worth living. I have been adding to it, Wade said quietly. Things I have learned. Things I want our children to know. Clara's vision blurred with tears. It is perfect. You know what the best part is? I get to live every single thing on that list because you were brave enough to take my hand. Clara thought about that first night in the storm when she had been so afraid. She thought about all the walls she had built and all the ways Wade had patiently waited for her to lower them. No, she said, lacing her fingers through his. We were both brave enough. That is how it works. They walked home together, hand in hand, to the cabin they had built and the children they had raised. And every morning after Clara woke up in Wade's arms and remembered what it felt like to be seen and safe and chosen, not rescued, never rescued, but loved in the quiet, steady way that lasts forever. The woman who had once sworn she would never trust anyone again had learned the most important truth, that the opposite of betrayal is not isolation. It is finding someone who sees all your broken parts and loves you anyway. Someone who will sleep on the floor so you can feel safe. Someone who will wait however long it takes for you to be ready. Someone who will build you a bigger cabin because he believes in the life you will make together. Someone like Wade Mercer, steady as stone, patient as seasons. And Clara, who had taken his hand and discovered she did not need saving. She just needed someone to build a life with, someone to choose and be chosen by, every single day for the rest of their lives.